She begins speaking before the detectives even press the record button. A quiet, trembling voice in a room that suddenly feels too small. At first, it's hard to tell whether she's confessing, rambling, or warning them. But within seconds, one thing becomes clear. This is not the kind of confession detectives pull from someone. This is the kind they brace themselves to receive. And what makes it truly unsettling is that she's smiling as she gives it. 3 hours earlier, at exactly 1:14 a.m., 26-year-old Mara Ellis walked into the Brookside Police Department. The building was nearly empty, the late-night quiet hanging over everything like a heavy blanket. She didn't bring a lawyer. She didn't bring family. She didn't even ask for help. She simply approached the front counter, placed both hands on the cold metal surface, and said, "I think you're looking for me." Nobody was. Not yet. The only file containing her name was a newly submitted missing person report from her roommate, filed earlier that afternoon. Nothing suggested danger, violence, or anything close to the story she was about to tell. Detectives assumed she'd gone somewhere cool off. Maybe a breakup. Maybe a private visit she didn't want to talk about. There was no reason to expect a confession, let alone one like this. Detectives Harlow and Jensen escorted her to interview room 2. From the moment she sat down, her body language contradicted itself. Her shoulders were tight, but her hands were relaxed. Her foot tapped nervously, but her breathing remained controlled. These kinds of mixed signals almost never point to deception. They usually point to psychological conflict, something unresolved inside the subject, and that made both detectives uneasy. People who fabricate crimes often present consistent emotional cues, either overly dramatic or suspiciously calm. People who are unraveling internally show fractures. That's what Mara had, and fractures in interrogations can be dangerous. As standard procedure, Harlow began with preliminary intake questions: name, date of birth, address, but somewhere between occupation and emergency contact. Mara leaned forward and interrupted him. "Can you just ask me why I did it?" This is the kind of question no detective wants to hear from someone who hasn't been accused of anything yet. It signals premeditation, guilt, and often a mind that's about to unload something overwhelming. It also shifts the interrogation dynamic instantly. Instead of trying to pull information out of her, detectives now had to slow the process down. People who want to confess often rush, desperate to spill something they've been rehearsing or suppressing. Controlling that pace is crucial. Harlow remained calm. "Tell us what you think happened." Mara exhaled deeply, lowered her eyes, and whispered, "I ended it. Tonight, I ended him." Detective Jensen hit the record button. Her tone wasn't hysterical. It wasn't panicked. It wasn't even sad. It was satisfied. Content, as if she completed something inevitable. She began describing a man she called Christopher, a name neither detective recognized from any recent case. She claimed he had been in her life for months, but not in any way you'd understand. A phrase that sent up multiple red flags. People avoiding direct facts often do so because they're lying or struggling with delusion. But Mara wasn't trying to hide anything. She was trying to explain something that terrified her. The detectives noticed something else. She never used the word killed. She only said, "I ended him." That kind of euphemistic language is common among first-time offenders who can't bring themselves to accept the full gravity of their actions. But what made her behavior so strange was that she didn't seem disturbed by the act itself. She seemed disturbed by her reason for doing it. When asked who Christopher was, she hesitated. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He wasn't real to you, but he was real to me." Two theories formed instantly in the detectives' minds. Either Mara was suffering from acute psychosis, projecting an imaginary figure into her real world, or she was describing a stalker, a real person she believed had been following or threatening her. One of those theories suggested a crime had occurred. The other suggested something far worse. Detective Jensen used a grounding technique, designed to pull subjects back into reality and establish factual baselines. It's a crucial step when dealing with possible delusion. Where is Christopher now? Mara blinked slowly, then answered with chilling clarity. "Behind my building, where I left him." No hesitation, no fear, just certainty. "We need you to explain how you left him there," Jensen said. This is when the facade cracked. She lifted her hands and stared at them as if they belonged to someone else. "He kept coming back. Every time I tried to sleep, he'd be there. I'd close my eyes and he'd whisper things I couldn't stop hearing." Tears welled in her eyes. "And tonight, he said I couldn't leave him anymore." "What did he say exactly?" Harlow asked. "That I belonged to him, that every thought I didn't say out loud was his." She gulped. "So I brought the knife because I knew he was going to try to stop me." Preparedness, intent, conscious awareness. These details immediately ruled out total detachment from reality. Her mind had planned ahead. Her fear had a structure, a reason, a target. But the next detail was what convinced detectives she wasn't imagining everything. "Christopher grabbed my wrist," she said, "hard, like he always did." This is a detail that investigators look for: physical sensation. People experiencing hallucinations struggle to describe tactile details accurately. They will mention seeing or hearing, but not touch. Touch usually indicates physical reality. "What happened next?" Jensen asked. She took a long breath. "I looked at him, and I felt nothing. No fear, no anger, just tired. So tired. And I stabbed him." "How many times?" Harlow asked. "I don't know. Enough to make him stop talking." Her next words confirmed she was not a seasoned offender. He wasn't supposed to bleed. First-time offenders are often shocked by the physical outcome of violence, especially stab wounds. This lack of anticipation suggests inexperience, not premeditated murder. Meanwhile, officers had already been dispatched to the location she described. Within minutes, they confirmed her story. A male, mid-30s, no ID, multiple stab wounds, behind her apartment complex. Exactly where she said he'd be. But here is where the story veers into the most unsettling territory of all. When detectives returned and asked Mara to identify the man, she froze. Her lips parted slightly, confusion clouding her expression. "I don't know him," she whispered. "That's not Christopher." Detectives exchanged a glance. "You said this was a man who followed you," Jensen said. "No," she insisted. "Christopher isn't real like that." "Then who did you kill?" "I told you," she murmured. "He was there. He looked at me like he knew me, like he knew everything about me." The truth unraveled over the next few hours. The man behind the building was a neighbor, someone who lived 2 streets down. He had no connection to Mara, no history with her, no record, no link to her life at all. Based on the timeline, he had simply been taking out his trash at the exact moment Mara walked into the alley. He likely startled her. He may have looked at her briefly. He may have said something as simple as, "Are you all right?" But in her mind, he wasn't a stranger. He was the embodiment of years of untreated paranoid delusions, a shape her mind had given to a fear she could no longer manage. When detectives explained this to her, she didn't break down. She didn't apologize. She didn't deny anything. She simply whispered, "Then why did he look at me like he knew who I was?" This question haunted the detectives long after the case concluded, because to Mara, it didn't matter who the man really was. Her mind had already decided what he represented. An intruder in her thoughts, a watch in the dark, a voice behind her eyelids when she tried to sleep. Her confession was unsettling not because of what she did, but because of how sincerely she believed she had escaped something terrifying. She wasn't trying to avoid punishment. She wasn't trying to manipulate the room. She wasn't even trying to justify her actions. She genuinely believed she had saved herself. And that sincerity, calm, composed, and completely detached from the horror of what happened, is what makes a confession like hers the most unsettling kind of all. Because sometimes the mind becomes the real crime scene long before the crime ever occurs. And in the world of criminal psychology, there are cases even more disturbing where fear shapes reality, where delusion becomes motive, and where the line between victim and offender becomes dangerously thin. Cases we'll be exploring very soon.